When my father joked that I couldn't even afford the tip, I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. The restaurant already worked for me. The waiter placed the $4,200 bill on the table, and my dad again laughed. A minute later, the general manager was shaking my hand. "Hello, my name's Evelyn Ross," I began, swirling the water in my glass while pretending not to notice the tension sitting right beside the butter dish. It was my father's 70th birthday, a long mahogany table, the kind with more silverware than conversation. My parents sat at the head, proud as ever, while my brother and his wife showed off their matching designer watches. I'd driven 2 hours to be there, though I'd almost turned around twice. I was the creative one of the family, the daughter who never settled, as Mom liked to say with a sigh. They didn't understand why I'd left my corporate job last year to start my own firm. To them, stepping away from a steady paycheck was proof I'd failed. When the waiter brought the champagne, Dad raised his glass. "To family," he said, "and to my successful children, the ones who can actually pay the bills." Laughter rolled across the table. I smiled, because that's what you do when you've learned that defending yourself only feeds their mockery. Dinner moved on. Truffle risotto, lobster, and stories about promotions, new cars, and vacations. I listened, occasionally adding polite nods, knowing I was the silent exhibit of what not to become. Then came dessert, and with it, the moment I'd remember for the rest of my life. The waiter placed the check discreetly beside my father's plate. He glanced at it, then chuckled. $4,200, he said, tapping the folder. "Guess that's what happens when you order like you own the place." He looked straight at me. "Let Evelyn cover the tip, if she can." A few chuckles followed. Even my mother tried to soften it with a herald, "Please," but she was smiling. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the same old ache of being underestimated, of being small in the eyes of those who raised me. But this time, I didn't shrink. I looked at the waiter, calm and steady. "Actually," I said, sliding my purse onto the table, "I've got it." Dad blinked. "You're kidding." I pulled out a sleek black card, one they'd never seen before, and handed it to the waiter with a small, unshaken smile. As he walked away, I could feel their smirks hovering, waiting for the machine to decline. But I wasn't the same woman they remembered, not anymore. The waiter disappeared toward the counter, the black card in his hand gleaming under the chandelier light. The table buzzed with tension disguised as laughter. Dad leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Sweetheart, it's fine if you can't cover it. You don't have to prove anything." Mom added, "Yes, Evelyn, no one expects you to spend money you don't have." My brother chuckled. "It's cute, though. I've never seen someone try to pay a $4,000 bill just for the drama." Their voices blended into a low hum, each word scraping the edges of my patience. But I kept my expression neutral, sipping water, tracing my finger along the rim of the glass. Inside, I was replaying every dinner that had ever felt like this. The graduation dinner where Dad toasted my brother's business degree and called my art major a hobby. The Christmas where Mom told the neighbors I was between opportunities when I'd actually been leading a quiet government project under an NDA. The family reunion where I paid for the catering and no one even noticed. This dinner wasn't new. It was just the latest scene in a long, familiar play. Only now, the script was about to change. Across the table, my sister-in-law whispered, "Do you think it'll decline?" And they both snickered. I smiled faintly. "You know," I said, "sometimes silence says more than a receipt ever could." Dad frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Before I could answer, the waiter returned, not with the awkward look of someone delivering bad news, but with a manager beside him, both wearing polite, almost reverent smiles. "Ms. Ross?" the manager said. "We just wanted to thank you personally. Your firm's cybersecurity protocols saved our restaurant group from that breach last winter." Every head at the table turned toward me. The manager continued, "We owe you our reputation. Dinner's on the house tonight, a gesture of gratitude." For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of cutlery stopped midair. Dad's mouth fell open. "Your firm?" he said slowly, the words almost foreign to him. I nodded lightly. "Ross Strategic. We handle defense and security infrastructure for hospitality and financial systems now." My brother blinked. "Wait, you own that company?" I could see the color draining from my father's face, the realization settling in that the failure he'd mocked had built something far larger than he'd imagined. The manager smiled again. "We'll just need your signature, Ms. Ross." I signed the receipt gracefully and handed it back, thanking him before turning to my father. "Looks like you don't need to cover the tip after all." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was cleansing. No gloating, no smirk, just peace. Dad finally cleared his throat, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "Well, I guess congratulations are in order." Mom stared at me, her eyes softer now, almost searching, but I didn't fill the silence this time. I just picked up my clutch, smiled, and said, "It was a lovely dinner. I'll see you all soon." As I walked out of the restaurant, I could still feel their stunned eyes on my back, the weight of a lifetime of judgment shifting, finally off my shoulders, and for the first time, I didn't just leave dinner, I left their approval behind. The night after that dinner, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights from my balcony. The laughter from the restaurant still echoed in my mind, not because it hurt anymore, but because it finally didn't. For the first time, I'd seen my family's words for what they were, small, shrinking against the size of what I'd built. When I started Ross Strategic 2 years earlier, I didn't even tell my parents. They'd already dismissed my move from corporate defense work as career suicide. I remember Dad's words clearly. Consulting? So, basically unemployed. I'd smiled then, the same calm smile I wore at dinner. Because I knew what they didn't, that the government had quietly recommended my firm to several defense contractors after I streamlined a data encryption model. By the time of that dinner, my team had 25 employees and clients in 6 states. But I'd learned something vital over the years. Success doesn't need to announce itself. It speaks when it needs to, and that night it had spoken loud enough. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice was hesitant, uncertain, not the commanding tone I'd grown up with. "Evelyn, about last night, your father didn't mean to make fun of you. He didn't know." I let the pause stretch. "Didn't know? Or didn't care to?" Silence. Then a quiet sigh. "He's proud of you, you know." "He just doesn't say it right." I almost laughed. "He doesn't say it at all." She didn't argue. Just said softly, "He will." Weeks passed. Dad began forwarding me articles about defense technology, trying to start conversations. Mom bragged about me to her book club. I knew because one of her friends emailed my office for consulting. It was strange, watching the shift. The same people who once spoke over me now leaned forward to listen, but I wasn't interested in gloating. I'd spent too many years chasing their approval, molding myself to fit their expectations. Now, I wanted something quieter, respect without performance. That's why, when my firm was invited to present at a major cybersecurity conference, I didn't tell them. I just did the work. On the morning of the keynote, I walked into the ballroom filled with industry leaders, government officials, and CEOs. And as fate would have it, sitting near the front row, uninvited but clearly proud, were my parents. Mom waved, nervous but smiling. Dad nodded stiffly, trying to look like he belonged there. When I took the stage, I caught his eye for a brief second, not with resentment, but clarity. He wasn't my audience anymore. I spoke with confidence, outlining solutions for national data defense, presenting insights my team had built from scratch. When the applause came, I didn't look toward them. I looked toward my team, the family I had chosen, the one that believed in me without conditions. Afterward, Dad approached quietly. "I didn't realize how big this was," he said, voice low. "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel small." For years, I would have broken at those words. This time, I just smiled gently. "You didn't make me small, Dad. I just finally stopped standing where you could shrink me." A month later, Dad invited me to dinner, just the two of us. No siblings, no noise, no sarcasm, just steak, bourbon, and the tension of everything we'd never said. He'd picked the same restaurant where it all started, the one with the $4,200 bill and the laughter that had burned into my ribs. I almost said no, but something in me wanted to see if closure really existed, or if it was just another myth we told ourselves. When I walked in, he was already seated, posture straight, hands folded, trying to look composed. "Evelyn," he said, standing. "Up. You look different. I am, I replied, sliding into the seat across from him. The waiter poured our drinks. For a while, we just listened to the low hum of other conversations. Then he cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, he began. Your mother's been telling me what you've accomplished. That company of yours, I didn't realize it was that big. I smiled faintly. You never asked. He winced a little. You're right, I didn't. Then, almost defensively, you have to understand. I just wanted you to be safe. A steady job, benefits, structure. You had a good thing and you walked away. And you assumed that meant I failed, I said quietly. You never thought maybe I walked away because I was meant for something more. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence between us wasn't hostile. It was heavy, like two people staring at a shared wound. You were always so sure of yourself, he said finally. I didn't know how to parent that. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I wasn't sure, Dad. I was terrified. I just didn't let fear stop me. You could have asked. I would have told you. He stared down at his glass, swirling the amber liquid. I thought I was pushing you to be strong. You were, I said. But you pushed me so hard, I had to learn strength without you. Nodded slowly, eyes glistening just enough for me to notice. Then, in a rare moment of vulnerability, he said, When the waiter took that card that night, I thought it was a stunt. Then the manager came back and said your company was the one handling their cybersecurity now. He called you their savior. His voice broke a little. That was the moment I realized I didn't know my own daughter anymore. I reached across the table, resting my hand over his. Maybe now you can get to know her. For the first time, in years, he smiled. Not the smug, dismissive grin I remembered, but something gentler. I'd like that. We didn't fix everything that night. Some things aren't meant to be fixed, only understood. But when the bill came, he slid it toward me, grinning sheepishly. Want to get this one too? I laughed, shaking my head. Not this time, Dad. You've got it covered. He chuckled, pulling out his wallet, and for once, it didn't feel like a competition. It felt like balance. If you've made it this far and the story's got you hooked, don't forget to subscribe, hit that little bell, and stay tuned. Because what happens next isn't about money or pride, it's about peace. The city was softer at sunrise, the kind of quiet that made success feel less like a finish line and more like a steady heartbeat. It had been nearly a year since that dinner with Dad. The second one, not the humiliating first. The one that actually meant something. I'd come to love early mornings. They reminded me of how far I'd climbed, one quiet hour at a time, while everyone else was sleeping. On that morning, I walked into my firm, glass doors gleaming, the hum of keyboards and coffee machines echoing like music. My assistant, Jenna, greeted me with her usual bright smile. Morning, Ms. Ross. The new interns are waiting in the conference room. I nodded. Send them in. 5 nervous faces entered. Young, hopeful, uncertain. I saw pieces of myself in each of them. The doubt, the ambition, the need to prove they belonged. I smiled and said, I know what it feels like to be underestimated. To walk into a room where people think you don't belong. But the truth is, you do. And someday, you'll build your own rooms, just like this. They listened, wide-eyed. I saw in them the future I used to dream of. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't chasing anything anymore. I'd arrived. That evening, I visited my parents' home, something I hadn't done without hesitation in years. Mom opened the door, flour on her hands, the smell of her old pot roast filling the air. You're early, she said, smiling. Softly. I brought dessert, I replied, holding up a box of pastries. In the living room, Dad was setting the table, not his usual spot at the head, but right in the middle, between the rest of us. That small gesture said more than words ever could. We ate together, not perfectly, not without a few awkward silences, but together. Halfway through dinner, Mom said, You know, your father's been bragging about you again. He told the neighbors his daughter works with the Pentagon. Dad cleared his throat, trying to act casual. Well, it's true, I laughed. You used to call that kind of thing a waste of time. He shrugged. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I didn't see what was right in front of me. There was no grand apology, no dramatic music, just honesty. And that was enough. After dinner, I walked into my old bedroom. The posters were gone, the walls repainted, but the faint outlines of my teenage dreams were still there. Invisible to them, unforgettable to me. That room had once been where I promised myself I'd be more than their expectations. Now standing, there as a woman who'd built her own world, I whispered, "You did it." A few weeks later, my parents visited my office for the first time. They stood in the lobby, eyes wide, taking in the rows of glass-walled rooms, the hum of collaboration, the quiet authority in the air. Dad touched the plaque by the door that read Ross Strategic Consulting. His fingers lingered on my name. Looks different when it's on a wall, he murmured. It's been there all along, I said. You just couldn't see it yet. He nodded slowly. You're right, I couldn't. Mom squeezed my hand. We're proud of you, sweetheart. This time, I didn't question whether she meant it. I just said, thank you. That night, I found myself back at that same restaurant. Not for family, not for business, just for closure. The waiter recognized me instantly. Ms. Ross, he said with a grin. Good to see you again. The usual table? I smiled. You remember? He chuckled. Hard to forget the night you covered the biggest bill of the year. I sat near the window looking out at the glowing skyline. The same table where I'd once been mocked now felt like sacred ground, the place where I'd stopped needing anyone's permission to succeed. A soft tune played in the background, and I realized something. The revenge had never been the my point. The real victory was the silence that followed, the peace that comes when you stop proving and just start being. Later, as I drove home, the black card tucked in my wallet felt almost symbolic now. Not a trophy, but a reminder. I'd learned that success wasn't about the dinner checks or the applause. It was about the quiet mornings, the steady courage, the moments when you stand up for yourself without raising your voice. At a red light, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. For a second, I saw the girl I used to be, uncertain, eager for approval, afraid to take up space. Then I saw the woman she became, the one who paid the bill not to prove a point, but to close a chapter. I smiled at her. You made it. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A message from Dad. Dinner next week? My treat. I laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep, the laugh of someone finally free. I typed back, Sure, Dad, but only if you let me leave the tip. Then I set the phone down, turned off the engine, and sat there in the quiet glow of my porch light. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. Not to my family, not to the world, not even to myself. Because I finally understood, the sweetest revenge isn't paying the bill, it's living in peace long after they stop doubting you.